Have you ever wondered what it takes to be successful? Is it intelligence? Is it money? Is it being hardworking? Well, in this video, we're going to review Grit by Angela Duckworth, and we're going to get some of those answers coming up. If you're new here, my name is Chris Dedan. Welcome to the channel, the one-stop shop for peak performance, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. So in this video, we're going to review the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. Now, the reason why I picked up this book and I read it is because I actually watched the TED Talk of Angela talking about grit and her concept and the research that she really brought forward. And it was such an interesting TED Talk that it intrigued me to pick up the book and read it. And I swear to God, it did not disappoint. And here are the top 5 ideas that I got out of this book. The first best idea of the book is what is grit. Now, the best way I could explain to you is the way that actually Angela presented to us what's in the book. In the beginning of the book, she talks about a research that she did with the United States Military Academy West Point School. Now, she explains that there's a lot of steps before getting into this school. The people that get in are highly intelligent. There are people that are extremely fit. So they go through this funnel of selecting the right people. But even within that, in the beginning when you are a cadet, there is this week that they put in right off the top, which is extremely difficult, which is something like a hell week essentially. And they put these cadets into such difficult scenarios for them to essentially quit. And what the school has realized is that there's a lot of people that still quit within this, even though they've picked the top of the top. Now, what is the difference between the people that succeed and the people that don't within this scenario is not intelligence, it's not their physicality, it's really grit. Now, what do we mean by grit? It's the ability to encourage themselves. It's the ability to really be relentless throughout these difficult moments. And what she explains, Angela, within the book, is that grit, in fact, is passion and perseverance for a long-term goal. So you have to be extremely passionate about what you're doing, and you have to be perseverant, which equals grit. So if somebody's coming into the school and it's their lifetime goal, they're not gonna quit because they have that vision of like it's extremely passionate to them. And finally, they're like, hey, I'm gonna persevere towards it. So these are the people that persevere. And one thing that I really liked about this beginning part is that she actually has a questionnaire that she gave to these students and everybody, which is on page 55. So just for that, I definitely suggest you guys to pick up the book because you fill up this questionnaire and you find out where you are within the grit scale. So just side note for me, I was actually 4.7 on 5 in my grit level. So it's really interesting. Go check that out as well. The second best idea of the book is how to structure your goals. Now, I really appreciated that she explained this within this book over here. And what she explains is that it's very easy for people in general to place that top tier goal, which is like that aha goal. It could be for you like, hey, I want to be a millionaire. Hey, I want to get six-pack abs. It could be, hey, I want to play in the NBA. And that's so easy to put it there. But the reason why people don't actually succeed those goals is because they do not break it apart in manageable steps. And this is why I really love, she explains it, that actually grittier people are able to break it apart. So let's take that example of being an NBA player, right? If you say that's my top goal, then I have to find a mid-tier goal and a low-tier goal. If you say the top goal is being an NBA player, the question I'm gonna ask you guys is, can I actually control being an NBA player? The answer is no. It's impossible to control that. There's so many variables. I could get injured. I could get in a draft class that's going to be used with so much more athletic people than me that are like so much have a better chance to get drafted. I don't know. There's so many variables, so I can't control that. So if I break it down, that's still my top goal. Break it down to a mid-tier goal. Let's say, hey, I want to be a starting varsity player within my high school. Once again, is that something that I can control? The answer once again is no, because I could show up there and the coach could not like me. The coach could see that, oh my God, I have enough players in your position. I don't need you, or whatever the case is. You might not get that. So that's the mid-tier goal. And if you break it down to the lowest denominator, the low-tier goal to really get that top-tier goal, let's break it down once again with this NBA player saying, hey, what if I say I'm going to dribble 1,000 dribbles per day and take 1,000 free throw shots per day? Now the question once again is, can I control that? And the answer to this one is yes. Now, obviously, it's not going to be easy. There are going to be some days you're not going to feel like it. There's going to be some days there's going to have some obstacles. There's some days that just physically not going to be possible. But it's something you could 100% control, being that dribbling. Now, if you do those tasks of 1,000 dribble, 1,000 free throw shots, do you have a higher chance of making your mid-tier goal, which is being the top player within the high school? Yes. And then from there, if you're that, I have a higher chance within becoming a NBA player. The answer once again is yes. So what you have to do is break it apart in manageable steps and put lower tier goals before hitting that main tier goal. And as well, within this, she explains that you have to get extremely obsessed about the long-term goal, which is your top tier goal here. And there's one sentence that I really wanted to read that she really brings upon here. So grit is about holding the same top goal for a very long time. So that's what obsession is in some way as well, is that understanding that that's my top goal. In this example, I want to be an NBA player. You have to obsess about it. Everything you're doing within your life has to move the needle forward for that top goal. The third best idea of the book is grit fixed? Now, this is a very interesting question because at this point, you might be wondering, are you just born with grit or is it something that you could develop? Now, there's two ways to go about this. Obviously, there are certain areas that if you're born with, there's going to be people that are going to be more grittier, depending what era they're in, depending if you're born within a time that's a recession or you're in war, or you're born into a time that just abundance within the world is so much more readily available, your level of grittiness is going to change. As well, as you get older, your grittiness becomes more developed. So as you have better experiences, your grittiness becomes more. So both of these answers are in fact true. It's not you're born with it and it's not you're only develop it. It's both together in some way, shape, or form. But one thing is for sure is that grit is not fixed. It's not an attribute that you just get and that's it, that's all. No, it is something that can be developed. And the best way that she explains that you could develop it is by taking an activity and looking at it in 4 different parts of this. And we're going to talk about it right now. So the first part, you have to find something that you're interested in. So it has to be something that there's some interest, so it could be developed into a passion. Afterwards, you have to put practice into it. You have to do that work consistently, even though it's not necessarily easy. The third point is there has to be a purpose within what you're doing. So if there isn't a purpose attached to it, it's going to be so much easier for you to push it away and not do it. And finally, you have to have hope. Now, when we're talking about hope over here, is hope that you are going to learn and you are going to succeed at what you're doing. So it might be difficult at a certain point, but you are going to pass that threshold of difficulty and you're going to become so much more eloquent within the activity. The example she gives within this book is imagine doing ballet dancing. Now, to get into ballet, you have to have somewhat of an interest to dance and, do those type of activities. Second thing is you have to be putting the time to the practice because it's not something easy to do ballet, far from it. Third thing is what is the purpose that you attach to it? Do you get the joy out of, oh wow, if I do this dance, it's like getting people to really enjoy it and they're joyful, so I'm spreading the joy and that's your purpose? And finally is having that hope that whatever movements you're learning, which are difficult or whatever pain you're feeling within your legs are actually going to pass as you get more eloquent within this activity and you raise up your grittiness within this particular activity. If you're seeing there's some value within this video so far, don't hesitate at all to give me one of these, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification so you can find out when our weekly videos come out. So the word of the book for this book is apoplectic, which means medical of relation to or causing apoplexy or shock. Now used in a sentence, when I told my father I was going to quit my job, he was apoplectic. The fourth best idea of the book is having a calling. Now, I really appreciate that she explains this within the book. And what she says is that the higher purpose you have, the more grittier you are, and the more grittier and purpose you have, the higher level of joy you will take out of life. Now, the way that she shows this is actually a chart over here. Hope you guys see it pretty well. So the chart shows on the bottom your level of grittiness with the exam, the little test that we spoke about previously. And the higher you are grittier, the more pleasure you will take out of life. And the higher you have purpose, the more pleasure that will be linked up with it. And the way that she explains this is actually a story about a community that had to build a church. So there's 3 people that were building this church. The priest goes and sees the first person and says, hey, what are you doing right now? The first person says, I'm laying a brick. Okay. Sees the second person and says, hey, what are you doing right now? The second person says, I'm building a church. Go sees the third person and says, what are you doing right now? The third person says, I am building the house of God. Now you see over here, this is exactly the same activity three different people with three different perceptions of what they're doing. Their purpose linked up with putting the brick is completely different. And I could guarantee it, that third person that's looking at it as, hey, I'm building the house of God, is most probably doing it with so much more joy, so much more attention to detail, and it's just a better person to be around within their energy, right? So it's so important to really ask yourself, what is the purpose that you're putting within the work that you're doing? The fifth best idea of the book is overcoming difficulty at a young age. Now, this is my favorite part of the book, and I'll explain why in a few seconds. So what Angela Duckworth says over here is that if you overcome difficulties at a very young age, you will become essentially more relentless, which means more grittier, right? And the way that she explains this is by a research done by Steve Maria. And what the research is, they take a group of mice, two groups of mice actually, that are in their teenage years. One group of the mice are linked up with some shockers and the other one as well. Now the difference is, one group of the mice actually have a button within their cage that they can stop the shocks when they start. So the shocks start happening, some of the groups of the mice find the button, they press it, and then the shocks stop. The other ones that don't have that button, they become so much more submissive of the situation. Now, a bit further on, when these mice are actually adults, they come back and they do the exact same test, but at this point, none of the groups of mice have a button to stop the shocking. So the shocks happen once again, and the group of mice that previously had that button, they're still looking for it. Even though it's not there, they never give up. Shock after shock, they're looking for it. And the other ones that never had that button, they're very submissive and they're just waiting for this pain to stop essentially. Now, what this explains is that at a young age, if you overcome a difficulty, you become more relentless and understand there's something next to do or continue to find essentially a situation. And what she explains is once you have mastery plus adversity and you overcome that, that's when you become more relentless, which means essentially grittier. Now, when we're talking about mastery and adversity, first of all, the adversity has to be actually something very challenging. So it has to be something that's difficult, not like a small adversity, like in this case, like the buzzing. And the mastery is finding a way to succeed even though you're faced with this difficulty or this adversity. Now, the reason why this is my favorite part is because I really understood what's happening in a neurological level within my life. When I was dyslexic, I still am dyslexic, but at a very young age when I was diagnosed with dyslexia, it was something that was extremely difficult. There was an adversity there for me. But then I started succeeding slowly and slowly. I become a master of it because I started realizing that I just have to continue, learn different ways to learn to become successful. So I created this new neural network within my mind that really made me believe I just have to continue working and find solutions to the problems. Even though I fail, I'm always going to succeed, which is exactly what happened with the first group of mice that had that button, and then they came back and didn't have that button. For them, they already created that neural network that there was an adversity, they became masters of it, and they could do it again. So that's the real scenario. So once you find a way to really overcome difficulties and create this new belief that you could overcome anything if you put in the work, you understand that it's going to be difficult, but if you put in the work, you'll become essentially a master at it. So did I like this book? I think it was quite obvious within the video that I actually did like it, but not even like in a way that I liked it. This became a book for me on my shelf of rereads, which means you don't only read it once. This is something that you should consume a couple of times because there's so many great concepts here that really understand and make you see how you could become more gritty, which is such an important trait to have if you want to succeed. So I definitely suggest you guys to go pick up this book. The Amazon link will be in the description below. Furthermore, the question of the day is there any area within your life that you're more gritty and some you are not? So this is an interesting question to look about. Like, are you gritty in one area and not in the other, or you're just all around gritty in everything that you do? So comment it down below. I would love to start that communication and really see what the community is saying with that. As well, there's some videos over here that could interest you. This is the first one is the playlist to my other book reviews I've done. Down here is some playlist of my entrepreneurship videos, and there's a button over here that you guys could click and subscribe and join the family. It'll be my pleasure for you guys to be a part of it, and I'm gonna leave you guys off with this. Hope you guys have a blessed and grateful day.